There's a particular kind of silence when a diner closes for the last time. The neon sign flickers off. The stools sit empty. And somewhere in the back, behind a grease-stained door nobody ever really noticed, there's a recipe card tucked into a drawer, handwritten, flour-dusted, never digitized. That's the thing about the blue plate specials of 1950s America. They didn't just disappear when the diners did. They took their secrets with them. I want to take you back, not in a sentimental way, in a real way. The 1950s American diner was a functioning institution. By 1958, there were an estimated 400,000 diners operating across the United States. That number is staggering when you think about it. One for nearly every small town, every highway stretch, every factory shift that ended at dawn. These weren't just places to eat. They were the social fabric of working-class America, stitched together with black coffee and pie. The blue plate special was the heartbeat of every one of them. The term itself goes back further, to the 1920s, when it referred to a full meal served on a blue divided plate at a reduced price. But by the 1950s, it had become something more coded, more specific. It meant the cook decided what you were eating today, and you were going to like it. Pot roast on Monday. Chicken and dumplings on Wednesday. Liver and onions on Friday, because that's just how it was. What most people don't realize is how deliberate those menus were. Nothing was random. Diner cooks, most of them women, many of them self-taught, operated on tight margins and zero waste. A pot roast on Monday meant the drippings went into Tuesday's gravy. Wednesday's chicken created Thursday's soup stock. The plates that looked humble were actually the product of serious culinary logic, passed down not through cookbooks, but through proximity. You learned by standing next to someone who already knew. The mashed potatoes. Let's talk about the mashed potatoes. Every diner had a version, and every regular swore theirs was the best in the county. The actual technique was simpler than people imagined, and more generous than modern recipes admit. Real butter, not margarine, not a tablespoon, but a quantity that would make a nutritionist nervous. Whole milk, warmed, never cold. And the potatoes themselves were riced, not mashed with an electric mixer, because overworked starch turns gluey, and that was considered a failure. These weren't health food. They were comfort, engineered with precision. The pie situation deserves its own conversation. A 1953 survey by a major food manufacturer found that the average American ate approximately 36 pounds of pie per year during that era. 36 pounds. Diner pie was part of that statistic, and the crust was the thing. Lard-based, not butter-based. Cold lard, cut into flour that had been sitting in a cool kitchen, handled as little as possible. Modern bakers often switched to butter for flavor, but the flakiness of a 1950s diner crust came specifically from lard's particular fat structure. That knowledge is largely gone now, retired with the women who held it. There's another layer to this that doesn't come up often enough. These diners were, in many communities, some of the few places where working people could sit beside each other and be served with the same dignity. The blue plate special cost somewhere between 35 and 65 cents in the mid-1950s, depending on the region. That price was intentional. It was meant to be reachable. The diner cook who set that price every morning understood something that gets talked about in economics textbooks now, but was just instinct then, that feeding people affordably builds community stability. The recipes themselves were never written down in any formal way. A few have been reconstructed by food historians, pulled from the memories of daughters and granddaughters who watched their mothers work. Beef Manhattan, an open-faced roast beef sandwich drowned in gravy, served over white bread, showed up in diners from Ohio to Oregon with remarkable consistency. The American chop suey, which had nothing to do with Chinese cooking and everything to do with using leftover ground beef with elbow macaroni and canned tomatoes, fed families across New England for decades. These dishes weren't glamorous. They were reliable. And reliable, in 1950s America, was a form of love. What happened to them? The interstate highway system, for one. When Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act in 1956, the routes that had sustained small roadside diners began to shift. Traffic moved faster, stopped less. Fast food chains expanded through the 1960s with standardized menus, lower labor costs, and the appeal of the predictable. The diner cook, who improvised Tuesday's special based on what was fresh, could not compete with a national franchise serving the same burger in every state. By 1970, thousands of those diners were already gone. The recipes went with the cooks who carried them. Some ended up in self-published church cookbooks or spiral-bound community collections that now turn up in estate sales. A few made it into local newspaper columns from the 1960s, filed away in library archives that most people never think to search. The knowledge exists in fragments. You just have to know where to look. What strikes me most, looking back at this, is not the nostalgia, it's the craft. These women cooked every day for strangers with no formal training, no celebrity, no social media. They served their blue plate specials to truck drivers and teachers, and young mothers and old men who came in alone. They fed people, and the fact that so much of what they knew has vanished is a quiet kind of loss, the kind that doesn't announce itself. If you've got a grandmother who remembers, ask her. If you've got an old church cookbook in a drawer, open it. The recipes are still there, waiting to be made again. What would you bring back first? I'd genuinely love to know.